Mr. True Crime.
What's wrong, baby? I told him first. Okay, what is it first? How? Yeah.
This is 13-year-old Tyler Edmonds confessing to his mother his role in a brutal murder. But unknown to the mom, the police had earlier walked her out and coerced a confession out of her son.
I don't have a problem with him talking to you, but I would prefer to be in the room because he is a minor. And y'all are sitting here doing stuff behind my back.
The problem is that Tyler is innocent, but willing to take the blame to protect someone.
Tyler, nothing. Son, look at me. Did you for real do that, or are you just telling him that? We both did.
But for those who know Tyler, they insist he couldn't have committed a crime like this. Tyler was being raised by his single mother.
I think his parents were divorced, and it was fairly acrimonious, and he didn't have a lot of opportunity to see his father.
With things bad between his parents, the only family he had close by was his half-sister, Joey Fulgum, who helped him see his father against his mother's wishes. Because of this, he had developed a close bond with her.
I had asked Tyler one weekend if he wanted to hang out that weekend, but he told me he couldn't. He was so excited he was going to his sister's house. It was kind of like a big event in his life, was going to his sister's house for the weekend. I can remember him saying that she was kind of his only family.
To him, she was the most important person in the world.
In fact, in one of his school essays, he wrote, "I love my sister more than I love myself."
I just wanted so bad for her to be happy.
Christy lived nearby. She was married to her husband, Joey, and had 3 beautiful children. But despite her husband showering her with all the love in this world, she simply wasn't happy in the marriage. So she began shamelessly having affairs. It got so bad that the couple appeared on the Montel Williams show. During that episode, she openly admitted that their last child wasn't her husband's.
Your husband agreed to go ahead and, be the father of this baby?
He said that it didn't matter who she belonged to, that he was going to be her daddy.
Her actions became the catalyst for the destruction of this once happy home.
Christy's infidelity had really taken an impact on their marriage. Her spending time with other people, having affairs, moving in a different direction that did not involve a family life. But I think Joey was always in love with her.
With so much love coming her way despite her flaws, she used it to manipulate all the people around her.
There's no question that Joey Fulgum was an incredible manipulator, especially her husband, her many lovers, and certainly her 13-year-old half-brother who adored her.
I can't think of the word that people groomed. I feel like she was kind of grooming Tyler to, be her little puppet or whatever she wanted him to, she had him brainwashed almost, basically.
And it was this mindset that would lead to one of the most chilling murder cases in American history. May 12th, 2003, Mother's Day, in the small town of Starkville, Mississippi. 13-year-old Tyler Edmonds is eagerly waiting for his big sister, Christy, to finish packing up for their trip to the beach.
Christy was still in the house and crunked the car up, and I was sitting there messing with the radio waiting for Christy.
While waiting in the car, Christy took too long to leave her house. He shrugged it off as harmless and enjoyed driving to the beach with his sister. While they were at the beach, Joey's brother Shannon and his wife Kimberly became worried, as they couldn't get a hold of him on the phone.
On Saturday, Joey was supposed to go to an air show. He didn't show up. And it just was not like him not to show up. And then the next day was Mother's Day, and he didn't show up for Mother's Day, and at that point, they knew something was wrong.
Worried and sick, Shannon and his wife rushed to the Fulgham residence to find out what was happening.
Shannon and his wife, Kimberly, went over to the house, and they find this gruesome scene. They make a frantic 911 call, and of course, authorities show up very quickly.
Well, I was at home, and I got a call from the deputies who had responded, and they called me to the scene. Joe was in the bedroom on the south side of the house, and he was in the bed, and he was laying on his stomach, and he had been shot in the back of the head. Didn't look like he ever moved. when he got shot, to me, in my opinion.
On the other side of town, Christy's cell phone started ringing on their way home.
We were heading back. Christy's phone rang, and people were calling her left and right. She just got this look on her face. She said they found Joey dead.
Joey's brother Shannon immediately told the police he knew who killed his brother.
He was emotional, but he wasn't ranting and raving. It was just a matter of fact. That something had happened to his brother, and he felt like he knew who did it.
Despite being a grieving widow, Christy was now the prime suspect, and the police set out to track her down.
We started looking for Christy, and we found her. We found her in Little Rock, Mississippi at her mother's house. Well, I sent men to Little Rock, Mississippi and talked to her that night.
She gave the impression of innocence, but the police had gathered enough circumstantial evidence to get a warrant for her arrest. However, she shocked them by coming to the sheriff's office in Starkville with a very disturbing story. Christy told police that 13-year-old Tyler had become angry when she told him that her husband had been abusing her. That night, Tyler waited until Joey was asleep, crept into his bedroom, raised the rifle, and killed him with a single shot to the back of the head. Upon hearing this, police contacted Tyler's mom and asked that she bring him over for a talk. Once there, officers removed her, while another deputy led Tyler to the interrogation room, alone.
They separated us is when the problem started.
For hours, Tyler denied knowing anything to do about the death of Joey. He was confused as to why the police were asking him so many questions, but when they told him what Christy had said, he was completely shocked.
I said, no. And the deputy leaned down and got in my face. He says, "Are you calling me a liar, boy?" And I said, "I'm not calling you a liar, but I don't think that my sister would say that."
To either call his bluff or try to scare the young boy into confessing, the police brought in Christy. So she says to him, "Tyler, tell the police what happened."
My sister was in an orange jumpsuit and, shackles and handcuffs. And to be quite frank, it scared the out of me.
She was just sniffling and crying. She said, "Oh my God, Tyler, they're gonna kill me. I'm gonna get the electric chair. You have to help me." And I'm like, I can't help. What am I supposed to do?
She asked him to take the blame and promised that because he was a minor, he would only get a slap on the wrist while she could avoid the death sentence. Scared for his sister's life, Tyler agreed to her plan, so when she left the interrogation room, he told the police he was ready to confess. This is when they turned on the camera and recorded his confession.
I had a gun like this, and my hand was sitting right here. What kind of gun was it? I'm not sure what brand, but it's just a 22.
But because they didn't have enough time to agree on a story, Tyler's version of events was different from Christy's.
She's been talking about doing it for a while because we killed Joey.
He said, late at night, they both crept into Joey's room. He raised his rifle to fire but couldn't go through with it. So, Christy placed her hand on the trigger and both squeezed the trigger together.
I heard it go off and I looked at him and saw that it actually hit him.
How do you know that it hit him?
I saw some blood. It was on a pillow, I guess. Something white. And there was just some little sprinkles on it. I thought it was blood. They really go off and I couldn't believe that I hit him.
Despite the discrepancies in their stories, this was what the police were looking for. They finally had a confession that would hold water in court. Outside the room, his mother was worried sick about him.
Minutes later, I started looking for Tyler, and that's when I got to the door where they had interrogated him and taped the confession. I don't have a problem with him talking to you, but I would prefer to be in the room because he is a minor. And y'all are sitting here doing stuff behind my back.
What's wrong, baby? I told him the truth. Okay, what is the truth?
They have the confession now, even though there's some discrepancy between Christy's version and Tyler's version. They have a confession.
Based almost entirely on his confession, both of them were arrested and charged with capital murder in the death of Joey Fulgum. Christy faced the death penalty, and Tyler faced life in prison if convicted. But when you look at things critically, how was Christy able to manipulate Tyler this badly? To fully understand why she used him as a scapegoat for her crimes, you have to look at psychological factors, traits associated with narcissistic personality disorder and sociopathy, often linked to a lack of empathy and a heightened focus on self-preservation. She was desperate to save herself, and she didn't care who took the fall for it. Experts in criminology also point to psychological projection, where Christy, faced with the consequences of her actions, decided to project her guilt onto Tyler, positioning him as the mastermind behind Joey's murder. Christy's close relationship with Tyler and her ability to persuade him to confess demonstrate her skill in leveraging family bonds to her advantage, exploiting Tyler's vulnerability and love for her. But it gets deeper. Christy demonstrated a rare phenomenon in criminology, a rare but deeply unsettling phenomenon. While most individuals instinctively protect their family members, Christy's self-interest took precedence. Forensic experts explain that this level of betrayal often occurs in individuals with a severely diminished moral compass, or those whose psychological framework is so warped that they perceive even family members as expendable. In Tyler's case, Christy didn't just manipulate a family member, she manipulated someone who idolized her. However, the reality of what he was facing hit him early because just a few days after the confession, he reached out to the police to say he lied to protect his sister. Still, the police dismissed his statement, and Tyler Edmonds' trial began on July 20th, 2004. The case garnered a lot of attention across the country. It was very unusual that a 13-year-old boy was being tried for capital murder. Edmonds' lawyer was Jim Wade, who had a reputation as one of the best criminal defense attorneys.
He has the reputation for being a bear anyway, for just going after it. I knew that if anybody in North Mississippi was going to give Tyler his best chance, it would be Jim Wade.
After going through the case file, Wade was certain that Tyler's confession was a lie he told the police to protect his sister, and that he only agreed to the crime after his sister was brought to the room.
Within minutes after she made that statement, Tyler made what was a false confession, saying that he and Christy did it.
But the judge refused to admit Tyler's recanted statement. They only admitted the first confession as evidence in court.
Confessions are really, really powerful pieces of evidence. It's a stretch for any of us to think that we would sit there and lie and say we did something we didn't, knowing we'd get in trouble for it. So if you have a confession, coerced, false or not, that's a good piece of evidence.
As the case went on, they brought in a well-respected forensic pathologist who claimed that his analysis of the bullet's trajectory was in line with Tyler's version of events.
Asked an expert that there were 2 sets of hands on this gun, and he said you could tell that from the trajectory of the wound in Joey's head.
But not everyone agreed with this testimony.
I've gone through it a million times in my head, and there's no logical explanation that would ever be able to explain how the angle of a bullet in someone can 100% be determined that 2 people were holding that gun. There's no way.
I mean, sounds a little far-fetched, but it was an expert opinion allowed in the trial and could have played a pretty big part in the jury's decision.
What Tyler's lawyer thought was one thing, but what the jurors decided, well, let's find out.
I had hoped that there would be an acquittal, or at least something from the jury saying, can we consider a lesser offense?
Judge Kitchens was a career prosecutor. When the jury verdict was returned, I saw a smile on the judge's face when he looked at the verdict, and it had been clear to me through the trial that he believed he was guilty and wanted him convicted.
When he read out the jury's verdict, it was heart-wrenching.
I was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole until age 65. They pushed my mom out, and they put me in handcuffs in a padded cell. And there's no toilet, no bed, it was just a little hunch of concrete on the floor.
The death penalty would be so much better than sitting here 24 hours a day for the rest of my life.
I'll never forget the first time that I visited with him was shortly after the conviction, and he was crying. When I went to leave, he was screaming, "Mama, please don't leave me here." It was horrible.
That time in prison took so many experiences away from me. There are things that I saw and experienced that I don't think any child should ever have to experience.
The sentence was so harsh that even Joey's family felt bad afterward. But even as the sympathy poured out for Tyler, no one cared that Christy was sentenced to death by the same jury. However, Tyler's lawyer, Jim Wade, wasn't ready to give up. He knew he had to fight for this little boy.
I became convinced that there were so many errors in the trial. I was convinced there were so many errors that surely this would be reversed.
Jim never gave up, kept on fighting even after Tyler was convicted. He told all of us that were there as witnesses, you will be in court again because I'm going to file for a new trial.
Still, after Jim Wade's rallying cry, Tyler spent the next 5 years at the Walnut Grove Correctional Facility, about an hour outside Jackson. At the time, this was considered one of the worst juvenile prisons in the country. The only ray of light in his dark ordeal was his mother, who kept on motivating him not to give up hope.
My mother, that is one of the toughest women that I know. I knew that she would never give up. Every court proceeding she was there, every visitation she was there.
As a single mother with very limited resources, she had only one choice: give up everything to save her son.
My mom literally gave up everything that she had, you know, her life, her house, her husband, her financial security.
Tyler's defense was pretty expensive, but I had liquidated everything I had, and I'll be in debt for the rest of my life. It was all about saving my child's life, and when you go to save your child's life, what is your child's life worth? What is your child's life worth?
But there was a major problem. In the state of Mississippi, very few convicted murderers ever get a new trial, and just a fraction of those ever get out of prison. Still, Joey's loved ones refused to give up hope. So how was Jim Wade going to face this seemingly impossible task? Although Jim Wade knew the kid was innocent, all of this unpleasantness could have been avoided if the child wasn't allowed to be interrogated alone. This reveals the deep-seated legal loopholes in the U.S. justice system that continue to allow minors to be interrogated without proper representation or protection. By default, a minor is at a disadvantage in interrogation situations, largely due to their lack of knowledge about their rights and their susceptibility to psychological pressure. Under the Fifth Amendment, individuals have the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. However, children often do not fully understand the implications of waiving these rights, which is where this system failed Tyler. But in Wade, he had someone who cared about him and insisted on justice and truth. His initial appeal was rejected by the circuit court and then by the state court of appeal. Tyler's case caused a lot of public debate and even inspired new legislation by state lawmakers who felt Tyler's sentence was too harsh for someone so young. He kept on pushing until in 2007, the court ruling was overturned after the judge found out the pathologist who handled Joey's body operated outside his area of expertise when he told the jury 2 people fired the murder weapon. For the Fulgham family, this ruling reopened wounds that were barely healed. But the state didn't want a retrial, so they offered a now 18-year-old Tyler a manslaughter plea deal. If he had accepted, his sentence would have been drastically reduced.
If he had taken the manslaughter plea, he would have been out of jail in just a few months. Whereas if he goes to trial and is convicted, he gets life imprisonment. But that was the strongest indication to me that Tyler was innocent.
The first trial had gone badly, so I was afraid to get my hopes up too much, because you never know what a jury's going to do. You're talking about 12 different people with different personalities, and you never know. We were kind of afraid to get our hopes up too much.
The new trial began on October 28, 2008, at the courthouse in Starkville, Mississippi. For Tyler, the second trial offered the hope of freedom. For his lawyer, Jim Wade, it was another shot at ensuring justice was served.
Just incredibly emotionally invested in their client. Those kind of attorneys take the verdicts incredibly hard and as personal failures. And I think Jim Wade is one of those. I mean, that conviction was devastating to him.
In his opening statement, Wade didn't hold back.
What the case is really about is about the prosecution charging a boy, a 13-year-old, as an adult. But all the evidence is going to show you is that the boy gave a false statement, not just to the law enforcement, but to his own mom, trying to help. In his 13-year-old mind, this older sister, who was really all he had in life.
When it was time to call witnesses, the first person Wade called was Christy Fulgham herself.
I had hoped that she would tell the truth about what had happened after she had already gotten a life sentence. And I thought, now she's got nothing to lose, maybe she'll tell the truth.
Christy Fulgham is called to the stand. She sits down on the witness stand. We're at the edge of our seats.
May I proceed, John?
You may.
Would you state your name, please, ma'am?
Christy Fulgham.
All right. Miss Fulgham, you're Tyler Edmonds' sister, is that correct?
And she takes the fifth to every question.
On the advice of my attorney, I'm not answering any questions.
Ironically, this wasn't a loss for Wade and Tyler. This was a perfect opportunity for the court to see Christy's true character. Despite being on death row, she still chose not to help save the life of her brother, whose only crime was loving her.
Why would you put somebody that young in that situation if you had any kind of feelings for them at all? If you had any thought of what it would do to the other person, why would you do that? I think she was just completely self-serving. I think Christy was out for Christy.
She was trashy, just to be honest with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I believe she was just pure white trash. So.
But that wasn't all. Wade also showed the jury the video of Christy and her husband at the Montel Williams show.
Welcome 23-year-old Christy to the show. You were married for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
The relationship was kind of on rocks. So back us up and explain this to me. You were married?
On the Montel Williams show, Joey and Christy, aired all their dirty laundry, all her boyfriends, all the infidelities that Joey knew about.
And you took off and moved to Texas.
Yeah.
You went to Texas and one of your friends went along, right?
Yeah.
And I should say that this friend was also the best friend of your husband, Joey.
Yeah.
What happened?
I ended up pregnant with my baby.
It showed the level of manipulation that Christy was capable of, carrying on all these other affairs, some to the knowledge of her husband.
That didn't tell you maybe it was time to get a divorce?
It did. But I love her.
She was a master manipulator, and that, coupled with the fact that she was not happy being one man's woman, was very important for the defense to show.
Then Wade set up establishing the real motive behind the murder.
In this case, both sides agreed that there were life insurance policies that Christy wanted her hands on.
It would have been probably March or April of 2003. I was at work and received a telephone call from Christy. She asked me about Joey's life insurance policy, how much it was for, who the beneficiary was. I told her that I couldn't tell her because Joey had signed a privacy statement stating that the only person that I could talk to about such documents was Joey himself.
Then the biggest bombshell dropped. Christy's father, Danny Edmonds, revealed she had been making plans of her own, with or without Tyler's help.
Christy's father is the only person that says she expressed the desire and plan to kill her husband, Joey.
So Christy came to your house, and tell the jury what y'all discussed at your house when Christy came over there.
She asked me for a gun, that she wanted to kill Joey. And I asked her why. And she said he was mean to her and the kids. And I told her, just leave him. And she said, no, he's got a life insurance policy.
Well, did she tell you what you could get out of it?
She was going to buy me a new Cadillac.
A new Cadillac?
Joey's brother Shannon was called to give his testimony. He said the both of them worked at a car dealership, and they were paid every Friday around lunchtime. Shannon stated that on May 9th, 2003, Joey had cashed his paycheck for approximately $1,020 and had placed the money in his wallet. He further testified that he and Joey had planned to attend an air show on Saturday, May 10th, 2003, but that Joey did not answer his phone calls when he called around 11 a.m. or 11:30 a.m. Shannon also testified that he had stopped by Joey and Christy Fulgum's home around 12:00 p.m. or 12:30 p.m., and that Joey had not answered the door. When Shannon did not hear from his brother by Sunday afternoon, he cut the screen on Joey's living room window and entered the home at approximately 5:30 p.m. He found Joey lying face down in bed and called 911. Further testimony came from Christy's former boyfriend, Kyle Harvey. He told the court that he met Christy Fulgham in 2002, and she and her 3 children began living with him in Jackson in March 2002. Kyle testified that Christy later moved back into her home with Joey. He stated that she planned to live with Joey until she found a new home, and would come to Jackson to look at homes for sale in the area. He revealed further that Christy had told him that she was going to inherit $300,000 from her grandmother. They had planned a trip to the Mississippi Gulf Coast for Mother's Day weekend, and Christy told him that she would pay for the trip, even though she was unemployed at the time. He said she picked up her brother, Tyler Edmonds, on Friday night, and she had called him at 6:30 a.m. on Saturday morning and informed him that she was on her way to Jackson. She, her 3 children, and Tyler Edmonds were waiting at Kyle's apartment when he arrived home from work on Saturday morning at approximately 10:30 or 11 a.m. They had proceeded to the coast, and Christy had a large amount of cash. She paid in cash for souvenirs, food, and their hotel room at the Beau Rivage Hotel. They spent Saturday night on the coast and returned to Jackson at approximately 5 p.m. on Sunday. Another witness who was called to give his testimony was David Noel, Joey's stepfather. He said Tyler and Darian Fulgham, Christy's sons, routinely spent Friday nights with him. David testified that he had picked up Tyler and Darian between 4 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. on Friday, May 9th, 2003. David stated that Christy, her 3 children, and Tyler Edmonds were home at the time. She informed him that she would pick up Tyler and Darian early the next morning because she was taking the children to the coast. She then called him between 4:30 a.m. and 5 a.m. Saturday morning and arrived after 5 a.m. to pick up the boys. After dealing several blows to the prosecution, the DA stood up to make his argument, and the first thing he asked was about Tyler's confession.
What is the truth? That me and Christy did it. Y'all killed him? Did you for real do that? Or are you just telling them that? We did this, Mother. Me and Christy did it.
Oh, it's very powerful. If you throw a confession in there and a jury goes, all right, he confessed to it, so he must be guilty.
Did you lie when you gave that statement?
Yes, sir, I did.
And how did you lie?
By saying that I had something to do with the murder of Joey Fulgum.
Why did you lie?
To protect my sister. It's not easy to believe that somebody that looks like him committed this crime. There's only one person in this courtroom who is an admitted liar, and that's the person sitting over there in between his 2 lawyers. His whole defense is, I'm a liar. Folks, somebody who will lie, protect his sister, will lie to protect himself.
The DA kept hammering on the biggest hurdle Wade and Tyler had to overcome.
What the evidence in this case is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, is that there are 2 people responsible for the killing of Joey Fulgum.
Prosecutor Frank Clark told me that he always wanted to be a prosecutor because those were the good guys to him.
The first is Joey's estranged wife, Christy Fulgham. The second person responsible for the death of Joey is this defendant.
Jim Wade and the defense team really faced this one big hurdle, which is the confession.
Me and Christy did it. Those are this defendant's words, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. They are not mine. I want you to tell us, as best you can remember, exactly what happened between this defendant and Christy Fulgham when you brought them into the room together.
She walked in and said, Tyler, hold my hand. Said, I have already told them what happened. I told them the truth, and I want you to tell them the truth.
What, if anything, did the defendant say at that point?
He told us that he wanted to tell the truth, that he shot Joey. He wanted to tell the truth, and he wanted to do it without his mother being present because he wanted to tell her after he told us.
Okay. And I would ask the court to allow Mr. Holly to sit inside the rail and operate the audio-visual equipment.
Then he drove home his argument by showing the jury the full 32 minutes of Tyler's confession.
Your name is Tyler Edmonds, is that right? Yes, sir.
I truly believe the confession by Tyler was the only thing in this case that was true. And it's heart-wrenching to watch.
Yes, sir. I was just holding the gun. If I wasn't really aiming at anything.
You had it on your shoulder?
Yeah, I had it right here. I wasn't really aiming. I was just pointing it somewhere.
It wasn't just the confession to the police that was damning. When Tyler's mother comes into the room, this incredibly emotionally charged moment, she gets on her knees. She says, honey, tell me what happened.
What's wrong, baby? Okay, what is it?
Tyler Lane, son, look at me. Did you for real do that, or did you just tell me that? We both did. What did y'all do?
There's a truth in that video that is hard to ever overcome.
With their backs pushed against the wall, Jim Wade requested that a false confession expert be brought as a witness. But the judge denied it.
For Jim Wade and the defense, it was a huge blow not to be able to call this expert witness in false confessions.
However, Wade still had a trick up his sleeve. He decided to use the main piece of physical evidence that worked in the defense's favor, Tyler's account of what he saw after the shooting.
I heard it go off and I looked at him and saw that it actually hit him.
How do you know that it hit him?
I saw some blood. It was on a pillow, I guess. Something white. And there was just some little sprinkles on it.
Wade then called a different pathologist to testify that the murder weapon could not have caused the damage described by Tyler.
You have a relatively small hole from a .22, and then the bullet goes in and does this significant damage inside the brain and the bone. But in this kind of a wound, the bleeding doesn't start right away.
There's a discrepancy there between what he says he saw and what the evidence would have looked like.
The photos from the crime scene supported this analysis. You could see there was no blood on the pillows, the crime scene was pristine, and there was no evidence of cleaning. During the first trial, Tyler's recanted statement was rejected by the court. But this time round, Jim Wade was able to get the judge to accept it as evidence.
Howard made a different ruling on the second trial and allowed us to put the retraction in as part of the case. So that was a crucial evidentiary difference.
The jurors now had access to Tyler's claimed true statement.
You're on camera now.
He said early that morning, he and Christy had packed to go to the beach.
Carried her bag out there, and then I went out and put my bag in there. I was sitting there messing with the radio, waiting for Kristen, and all of a sudden I just heard this pop. I didn't know what it was. I didn't think anything of it.
Kristen was still in the house. And you heard a pop.
I heard a pop. I didn't know what it was.
As they started driving, Christy told him that she had shot Joey, and then described the story she wanted him to say when questioned by police. Jim Wade told the court that Tyler was telling the truth now after lying to protect his sister. Still, the prosecution turned it around and claimed Tyler was a pathological liar who would say anything to escape punishment. It was now up to the jury to decide which version of Tyler was telling the truth. It was time for Tyler to take the stand.
I've watched the tape a million times over the past 15 years, and that moment is so hard for me to watch because I know what was coming next.
The last day of trial came on October 31st, 2008. As Tyler took the stand, it was all down to whether the jury believed his story or not.
Tyler Edmonds is called to the stand. There was a hush over the courtroom. The emotion is still there from that confession tape. I mean, we feel for this kid now as he sits down. It was quite a moment.
Tyler, you were present on the courtroom when a statement you gave to the police is shown to the jury?
Yes, sir.
Did you lie when you gave that statement?
Yes, sir, I did.
And how did you lie?
By saying that I had something to do with the murder of Joey Fulgum.
Why did you lie?
To protect my sister.
Why did she tell you that you had to take the blame for it?
Because nothing would happen to me because I was under 18, and that if I didn't, then they would kill her, and that I would never see her or her kids again.
She indicated to you that you should take the blame. How were you supposed to know what to tell the police?
She told me to say that it was an accident at first.
Christy told young Tyler that she would give him a hint when it was time to change his story and take the blame. So, when the police walked in with Christy, he believed she was giving him the hint.
She was sitting on my right, I was on her left, and she reached over like this and said, "Hold my hand," and I held her hand. And then she said, "Tell him."
When she told you that, what did you believe she was telling you to do?
That was my cue to go take the blame for it.
No further questions.
Then it was time for the prosecutor to begin his cross-examination.
No, sir, she just told me that if she came in there and told me, gave me the cue, then I was supposed to go take the blame for it.
So you spent all this time getting these two stories together, but at no point did she tell you what the cue would be for you to change your story?
No, sir, she was just like, when I give you the cue, you'll know what it is, you'll know.
You stated Christy had assisted you in firing the gun. What part of that story protects your sister?
Looking back, none of it now, but then I just thought that somehow it would.
Why didn't you tell the lie Christy had told you to tell, that it was an accident?
Because I thought that somehow by her not being the only one to do it, it would still help her, but like if I
thought that I was going to get in trouble, it wouldn't be as bad on me either.
As Frank Clark gets up to start his closing argument, there's no doubt how passionate he is about this case.
Christy Fulgham did not act alone. She found someone who was willing to go into that room with her with a .22 rifle, pointed at the back of Joey Fulgham's head, and then, as that defendant said out of his own mouth, we squeezed. And the question now is whether someone will be held accountable for that. The question becomes whether someone who doesn't look like we expect a criminal to look, he doesn't act like we expect a criminal to look. The question is, though, is he to be held accountable?
For Tyler, everything's at stake here. Tyler's entire life is at stake.
Then, after such a long and draining fight on behalf of Tyler, Jim Wade stood up to give his final argument. And boy, was it touching.
Is there any physical evidence? Is there anything other than this child's words? Something you know, some objective fact that proves that he's guilty? No, there isn't. Just this child's words. Think about this. This is a 13-year-old child. Is he upset because he killed somebody, or is he upset because for 40 minutes or whatever it is, they have him on tape lying? And his mother comes in, he's tired. He's so tired he can't even stand up. And he's crying and upset. Look at Sharon. Did y'all see how shocked she was? She knows it's unbelievable that her son could do anything like that. The prosecutor made a very emotional argument like he knows what happened. Well, he wasn't there. He does not know what happened. He does not know what happened. It may not be for us to know exactly what happened here, but I do know this. One day we're going to all stand there before God and we're going to give an account. If I were sitting on this jury, I'd a lot rather be up there telling God I voted that child not guilty than telling him I bore false witness against my neighbor.
After the trial was over, the nervous wait for the verdict began.
I remember sitting outside the courthouse with my mom and just thinking, like, surely there's enough good left in the world. Like, surely there's enough good left in the world. I think it was somewhere around 10 a.m. we get word that the jury reached a verdict. And walking back into that courtroom was, like, emotionally deafening. There were so many emotions.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you arrived at a verdict in this case? Would the defendant and his attorney please stand? You may read the verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
The jury has returned a verdict of not guilty. You are hereby, and the sureties on your bond, discharged. You may go. Court's in recess.
I can still hear the court clerk's voice in my head. I can still hear her voice as clear as day when she read the verdict and said not guilty. And I remember hearing that and then just wanting to get out of there. I just wanted to leave. That was probably the first time that I just absolutely just like, because it's just the whole weight of the world had just like been lifted off of me. For years, I was just.
Can you talk to us? I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go. I'm relieved. I've been praying for this for almost 6 years, and it's been torture. I'm just glad that I can move on with my life finally. God is good, and I've prayed till I couldn't pray anymore.
God is great.
And my family and my friends have all supported me, and we prayed for 5 years, and He took care of it.
I told Tyler this morning, my life is, coming close to its end, and his is just beginning, so he has all the potential in the world. He thinks about it every day. He wakes up in the morning and think about it. But now that this burden's lifted, there's no telling what this young man will accomplish.
But even as Tyler, his mother, and their supporters were celebrating his exoneration, we cannot forget the Fulgham family, who were still in pain.
It's hard to believe that that verdict would come out. I mean, sitting there during the whole trial, we tried to kind of view the trial as the jury would. There was no doubt in our minds And that was what was so surprising about the whole verdict. The only thing our family has ever wanted to know was the truth. There's no way we can bring my brother back. Joey's dead and gone. We don't want to punish somebody else just to seek revenge. We just want to know the truth.
The truth is the first statement. That's exactly consistent with everything that we found at the scene of this crime. Tyler told the truth, and he got away with it. And look, I don't begrudge him that. Maybe he'll make a good life. Maybe he'll have a really happy life, and I hope he does.
And the biggest victim of them all, Joey Fulgum, whose story has been overshadowed by Tyler's ordeal. A husband, father, and member of the community. Joey Fulgum was more than the man who was tragically murdered in his home in Starkville, Mississippi. He was deeply involved in his children's lives and community. Joey was known for his steadfast commitment to his family. Despite the challenges in his marriage to Christy, particularly after discovering that one of their children was not biologically his, he still chose to remain a father to the child. As a devoted father, Joey made it clear that biology didn't matter to him. He was going to be there for his children, no matter what. This commitment spoke to Joey's character and determination to keep his family together, despite the difficulties he and Christy faced. Joey and Christy's troubled relationship was no secret to the community. Joey's siblings and the extended family struggled with the loss of a brother. But perhaps no one felt the pain of his death more than his children, who not only lost their father and mother, but were being passed from one relative to the other. And then there's Tyler, who despite now being a free man, had to start from scratch. Tyler didn't know where to start, so he decided to leave Mississippi entirely.
I didn't know where else in Mississippi I could go, where I could be anyone other than the Tyler from 5 o'clock news. I changed. This is what happened with my life, and I needed to figure out who I was. Otherwise, the title, Series of Unfortunate Events, has already been taken.
The trauma that comes with such an experience usually lasts a lifetime.
I've watched the tape a million times over the past 15 years. And that moment is so hard for me to watch because I know what was coming next. I don't really know how to explain it. It was confusing. I didn't understand what was going on. And I'd never been to a principal's office, much less interrogated by the cops. I felt a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and now I was feeling pressure from both ends. The loyalty towards my sister, and then my mother, knowing that she would be so upset if I lied, and knowing, I guess, in my heart of hearts that telling a lie was wrong. But at some point, you know, everyone breaks. Everyone has a breaking point. And I think when you're a child, that breaking point is a lot lower.
Tyler, wait. Tyler, look at me. Stand up and talk to me, son. I can't stand up, my legs hurt.
Watching this sends shivers down my spine because I can't imagine the nightmare both of them were going through. Still, his story is a deep dive into why people make false confessions, especially innocent children.
Children should not be allowed legally to speak to a police officer without an attorney present. Period. I hear some people say without a parent or an attorney, it needs to be an attorney, because even parents don't know how to navigate the system as well.
However, since confessions are that strong, Tyler believes the police should record everything.
Because like my case, of course, the first several hours were not video camera. The video camera only came on when it was convenient for them. And I think that protects both parties. I think the good way to, common sense, easy way to protect that is to have cameras in an interrogation room, start to finish.
Tyler's ordeal brought scrutiny to the career of pathologist Stephen Hain. His excesses led to the conviction of 2 other men who were freed in 2008 after DNA evidence and the killer's confession proved their innocence. The state of Mississippi removed him from their list of approved pathologists, and several of his victims have since been freed or given new trials. Before her murder trial, Christus was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 12 years in prison after convincing 2 men to help her attempt to escape from prison. She was tried for the murder of Joey Fulgum in 2008, convicted, and sentenced to death. She appealed, and in 2010, her death sentence was overturned.
The last time I heard from her was December of 2008. There was a letter, and it was an apology letter. She didn't even say what she was sorry for. It literally said, "I'm sorry for ... Well, you know what I'm sorry for." And that just pissed me off. It made me so angry. I was so angry. Like, you wait until 5.5 years, 2 trials later, now you want to say you're sorry?
This story also gave birth to an unsung hero. While the Tyler Edmonds case may be Wade's most famous, it is far from the only example of his legal heroism. Jim Wade's career has been marked by his defense of those wronged by the legal system, particularly in cases where justice seemed elusive. Wade's philosophy of law centers on the belief that everyone deserves a fair trial, and that the legal system should be a force for good, not a mechanism that unjustly punishes the innocent. Throughout his career, Wade took on high-stakes cases, often representing clients with limited resources, or those facing overwhelming odds. However, his influence goes beyond the courtroom. His work has helped shine a light on systemic issues within the criminal justice system, particularly in the treatment of minors and the practice of coercing confessions. Wade has long advocated for reforms that would better protect vulnerable individuals, especially children, from being manipulated by the system. His efforts have helped to expose the flaws in a system that allows minors to be convicted based on coerced confessions, and his work continues to inspire other defense attorneys fighting for justice in similar cases. His dedication to Tyler Edmonds was not just about winning a legal battle, but saving a young man's life and giving him a chance at a future. He recognized that Tyler's wrongful conviction was not just a legal failure, but a moral failure of the system. His compassion and empathy for his clients set him apart as more than just a lawyer. Wade is a defender of justice, someone who uses his talents to make a tangible difference in the lives of those who need it most. But Wade is just one man. The media plays a bigger role in how these types of cases pan out. From the beginning of the investigations, Christy Fulgham was cast by the media as the driving force behind the murder of her husband, Joey. As more details about her alleged manipulation of Tyler emerged, she became the centerpiece of the story, with headlines emphasizing her supposed cold-blooded planning, her manipulative nature, and her dysfunctional marriage. This fueled the public perception of Christy as a villainous figure, responsible for not only her husband's death, but also for dragging her young brother into the crime. The media's emphasis on Christy's troubled marriage, especially the revelation that Joey's child wasn't biologically his, painted her as an unfaithful wife, which further entrenched her negative portrayal. Joey, meanwhile, was portrayed more simplistically in the media as the tragic victim of a family betrayal. However, his appearance with Christy on the Montel Williams show, where their marital struggles were publicly aired, complicated his image. While Joey was a victim of murder, the media's coverage of his appearance on the show raised questions about the state of his marriage and indirectly played into public discussions of whether Christy's relationship with him had made her capable of such a crime. A deeper analysis suggests that media bias plays a significant role in shaping public perception. Early reports from local outlets tended to emphasize the shock value of Tyler's involvement, with the narrative largely driven by the police's version of events. Tyler was portrayed as the boy who confessed, with little attention given to the coercive interrogation tactics that ultimately led to his false confession. The emotional details of Christy's manipulation were not initially highlighted, allowing the public to digest the story at face value, without questioning the fairness of the interrogation process. Christy, on the other hand, was vilified from the outset. The media leaned heavily on her past behaviors, her affair, her appearance on a talk show, and her role as a wife seeking life insurance. These factors framed her in a negative light long before her trial began, and by the time she was formally charged, public opinion had already largely turned against her. Even though the judges are the ones passing sentences, the media can hang a noose around a suspect long before trial. Hopefully, this story is a lesson to many others in similar situations. No matter how hard the state has screwed, the moral dilemma you're in. Fight for what is right. Fight for justice. Fight for the truth. And you will be free.